think that that's what's so great about all the different guests that we're getting, because it's like every single person has a different journey, and it might resonate or relate to you, the listener, way differently than it will to me. But it's like there's a nugget, there's a gem in everybody's episode that I love and I'm learning from too.
Yeah, it really is. It's like I would tell anybody who, if they have not listened to an episode yet, like it is a choose your own adventure podcast. Like you can find,
I love that.
You can find any.
Brennan, thank you so much. Seriously, this is cool because now you're in front of me like this versus behind the counter, which is where you usually are in the studio. But you're my producer, and you were the one that totally got me to jump out of my comfort zone and actually start a podcast. So thanks for jumping on this and doing this recap with me.
Absolutely. It's actually the first recap episode I've ever done for a podcast, and it's been it's been like fast and furious. Like I feel like when you called me last May, I believe, like you wanted to start 2 podcasts, and then we got to navigating no. So it's been a journey, and it's been just a lot of podcasts. I've just been amazed by how much you've taken to it, because it's like a lot of people would have given up by now. Like, well, they said 100%.
Well, I think at the very beginning I asked you, like, what's the average podcast last? And you were like 1, but if you can make it to 20, then you're good to go and you're getting some traction, right? And I've always been this way when I start something, I go head in and I'm like, this is what's going to happen. But you called me out on it because on my speaker homepage, like on my website, I had down like I have a podcast, and I used the tagline like podcast coming soon, and it was like a year that I had it because I knew in my heart that might be a platform that I would want to go down or an avenue, but I hadn't started. I didn't know how to do that.
Yeah.
And so one of the biggest things is surrounding myself around a confidence team or people who have been where I want to go, and then asking them for their help. And you have been that person for me. So thank you.
What was like your biggest no in starting a podcast before you found me in Spokecast? Like, I know I had you on the podcast like a year and a half ago on Spokecast to talk about the Semaphore, and I embarrassingly didn't even read any of it.
And you wouldn't be alone, but at the same time, that's pretty good. No, I think the biggest no for me was jumping into one more thing that I didn't know how to do. Like I was already juggling, and I can juggle, not that I was in the circus, but it was just one more thing that I had to learn how to do. And it was easier for me to procrastinate with it or rationalize to myself, like, I will start it tomorrow. And I realized after talking with you, like, it was just that bigger platform that I could reach more people and share my message and learn more and develop myself as a speaker to gain that traction. And so you really called me out on it. And by having that, I was like, oh, I've got to do this. But it started because I wanted to do an Audible for the Semaphore.
Right.
And you were like, well, come in, we'll record it. It'll be your first book. And it was like one thing led to another. And you were like, I think, Blue, you would be pretty good at this. And so the message, we brought it down to navigating no, because I think that's one of the most relatable things that most people can resonate with. And it's like those challenges, overcoming that rejection, failure, and self-doubt. We've all been there. And so I think you called me out on it, and I was like, you know what? It's time to talk about it or just actually do it. And so I decided to do it. So thank you, because here we are 3 months down the road.
Yeah.
I think we have 16 episodes done. We have, I think, 12 in the vault. So it's like we're launching every Monday. And I have learned so much along this three month little journey. I also started it because I thought to myself, like, a podcast would help me have a bigger platform to share my message.
Yeah.
Right. And to bring value to everyone, because I believe in optimism and sharing that optimistic or fun feeling and energy that I could bring not only on stage, but to a different platform. And then the other thing was like, what better way to connect with people and learn than to interview other people who have been through something, a challenge or a journey that I can learn from? Because as a speaker, I'm able to only express my journey. Right. And when I'm speaking, most people might not relate to my story. Now, I don't want to say most, but a lot of people aren't going to be able to relate to my story of all the journey that I've gone through. But maybe they can get it from somebody else. And so that was the whole point, is like, let's interview people of what their hardest no was, what they learned from it, and what they would share with everybody else. And so it's just been a learning experience, because I'm getting that repetition in of my speaking, because I speak on one of the topics is navigating no, but then also it's like, I am still speaking with my guests, and I'm learning so much. And I know you are too, even though you're sitting behind in the studio.
That's one of the best parts about being a podcast producer. I mean, I produce about 10 different podcasts, and I get to just sit and listen to podcasts all the time live, and I get to see it firsthand. And doing as many episodes as we've done, like, I've learned a ton just about people's experiences. A lot of entrepreneurs, like I'm an entrepreneur, and just being able to hear, you know, the difficulties they've gone through to get to where they are today is very encouraging and an inspiration to me to keep on going, because there's been so many times in my career of podcasting that I've been like, should I keep on doing this?
Sure.
And like, but seeing all these people who've had amazing ideas and are visionaries keep on going, like, it gives me inspiration to keep on going, because this hasn't been the easiest profession to break through. Like,
no,
everybody wants to start a podcast, but it's always very difficult to get them to keep them consistent.
Well, and to stay on that traction.
Yeah.
Right? And I will be an example of, like, I thought it would be easier to do than it has been. Right. And it's like booking the guests, being consistent, and having real content that's valuable, that people can relate to, that brings them back.
Yeah.
Right. Like, brings the audience back in. And it's like, I'm navigating my own no every day when we do the podcast, because it's like, how do we get, one of my favorite things is, I asked you, how do we grow? How do we get this traction, and do we get in front of more eyes and more views and more likes and comments? And you were like, you need people to like your work, comment on it, share it, follow, subscribe, and view it. And that has been like trying to get blood out of a turnip. It really has. And you told me, you were like, hey, you know, you're getting some traction. You have 50 views on YouTube. I go, well, great. I've exhausted my friends and family. Right?
I mean, I will say, like, and I've told you this, like, I have a lot of podcasts, and you're up there as one of the most successful already in the first 3 months. And it is like, it's podcast success does not come in the first 3 months. Does it come in the first 6 months? When it really comes is in the first year, and you're only a quarter of the way through that. And I feel like as you keep on growing this podcast, more and more people will find it. More and more people will hear the story of navigating no, and they will be addicted to wanting to learn about all these people's stories of them navigating self-doubt, rejection, and failure. Like, and I just think, like, we've only just begun.
Well, and I think that goes to any industry, right? Like, if you start a business, your chance of failure is very high. So you've got to stick with it consistently. And that is kind of an overall general theme that we're getting from everybody that we've interviewed, whether it's like a solo entrepreneur, or it's a CEO, or a Hollywood director, or anybody. It's like, their journey it's not easy. And I think when we see people's moments of, like, highlight, like Jean-Luc, for example, when he made the Olympic team, it was like, you only see him as the Olympian, but you don't know the story and the road that he took to get there, and the sacrifice, and all of the things that he did to get there, and all the rejection he was told, and the failures. And it's like, I think that's that industry standard of whether you're starting a podcast, or whether you're starting a franchise, like in Portland, like Natalie Fairchild mentioned about her Pacific Perks. It was like, it's not easy, and it takes that grind, it takes that grit to continue moving. And I think that's that theme that everybody's hitting on. I love it, because the podcast also is timeless, right? It's like, you don't have to see episode 1 to know what's going on in episode 16.
Right.
And you can go back and revisit these things. And I think also, like with my book, it's like, it's going to mean something different to you if you're if you're right out of college
Right.
versus like having kids or landing this new job, or it's going to be timeless and it's going to mean something different to you depending on the time that you are in your life. And I think that that's what's so great about all the different guests that we're getting, because it's like every single person has a different journey, and it might resonate or relate to you, the listener, way differently than it will to me. But it's like there's a nugget, there's a gem in everybody's episode that I love and I'm learning from too.
Yeah, it really is. It's like I would tell anybody who, if they have not listened to an episode yet, like it is a choose your own adventure podcast. Like you can find,
I love that.
You can find any of the how many episodes we've done, the 16 episodes, like you can definitely find a story that is relatable to you, and that's probably a great place to start. But then like go down the journey of learning about all these other people that might not be relatable, because you don't know what's relatable until like you actually hear someone's
you
story.
Hear a story,
and
right?
like everyone, even I gotta say, like early on, like Brian Brian Seeley, like you got this grown man, like someone you'd
a Marine Corps veteran,
yeah, like a very masculine guy, like this crying on your podcast, and his story was so poignant, and just I was just like, I can't believe how much this guy has gone through in his life, and how he successfully overcame addiction. And now he's a cybersecurity like consultant that's working with some of the biggest companies in the world, like, and he never gave up, and like it everyone has had that kind of story. I mean, not to that extreme, but like they're all so inspiring.
Well, yeah, and I mean, we've all faced challenges, right? Every single one of us has been rejected, whether that's you being dumped by somebody, whether that is you being fired, whether it is not getting pushed over for the promotion that you went for. And it's like, we've all been rejected. We've all failed at something. And if you haven't failed, then you haven't tried hard enough, honestly, right? Because it's like, that's failing and being able to get back up again, I think is one of those themes that it's like you learn so much, and we're never going to win every single thing. We're not. We are going to fail, and the biggest failures are what teach us the most. And I think our guests are explaining that, and their journey is relatable because everybody's telling their different story. And you're like, even though like Sandy Zimmerman won the American Ninja Warrior, she's the first woman to hit the buzzer. It's like, oh, I'm not that person, but man, the ability for her to talk to herself and have her own personal mantra is incredible. Because and bringing that out in the episode where I asked her, like, what did you do? And she's like, I don't know if you've ever noticed this, but I say that before I go on to every single obstacle. Is like, Sandy, you were born for this. And it's like, that is that mantra that you tell yourself. And I have that. It's like that trigger that I tell myself. And so when I'm told no, I just switch it to on, right? And it's like my ability to turn it on, in the sense like it's time to get on with my life, get on a different train and be like, I'm going to prove that person wrong. I'm going to prove to myself that I can do it. And then I can prove to the world that I can do it too. And it's like having that trigger is another theme. It's like something that someone says to themselves or someone else says to them that gets them to move.
Yeah. You know what struck me the most about Sandy's interview was when she said that I was very familiar that she was on Ninja Warrior when she was on it the one time when she hit the buzzer, because she's from Spokane. It was a very big deal in Spokane. But I had no idea that she had been on 4 other times.
Sure, you're right.
And then didn't even make the cut on TV.
No, she failed.
Yeah, she failed.
She failed. And then I think I asked, like, what did it feel like when your arm slipped and she's like, immediate shame and embarrassment. And I was going to have to relive that. And I mean, it was like, it really is neat to hear that it was these moments that led up, because if she hadn't failed, I think she mentioned this, if she hadn't failed, she wouldn't have kept going. Yeah. Right. And it wouldn't have meant as much in the end. Like after she failed that many times, hitting that buzzer meant that much more because she didn't quit the entire time.
Yeah. Speaking of failing miserably on a national level, like one of
I know where you're going with this.
One of my favorites too. Interviews was with Dmitrious Bistrevsky. Yeah. He was on So You Think You Can Dance. and he was like a break dancer, and he was kind of just made fun of. Like he was a act that like they put him on stage to do his dance because they knew he was gonna fail.
Yeah.
But they wanted to make a mockery of him.
Yeah, absolutely. And it looked like it looked like Napoleon Dynamite.
Yeah.
Up on stage, and his ability to stand there and take the shots from the judges, and it was just like, oh. And I love when they said maybe in a few years you could come back and try again. And he's like, okay. And you know what he did? He didn't go back. Instead, he changed the trajectory of his goals, and he became a Hollywood actor and became one of the greatest villains of all time, being Darth Vader. And his entire story is full of failure.
Yeah.
Left, right, straight, forward. I mean, it was like there was no straight path to him achieving what he dreamed of doing, and he did it. And it's because he never gave up. And that was the epitome. I love that story. And one of my favorite parts on that was that when he mentioned being Darth Vader, and I'm not able to actually wield the lightsaber because of insurance purposes with his knee. And it was like they were like, sorry, you're going to be a third of Darth Vader. You're going to just be the costume designer, right? And it was like, okay. But he didn't like that because he told himself, he's like, I don't want to go to cons and then someone asks me to wield a lightsaber and I look like Napoleon Dynamite with a lightsaber. And so instead he took it on his own and he reached out to the stunt coordinator and said, I want to learn how to work this sword. And he did for those 6 months. And at the very end, the director was like, we can't make the scene look right because when the stunt coordinator or when the stunt Darth Vader's coming in with the sword, it doesn't match up because you're 6'7" and we just need to do something. I wish that you would learn how to use the sword. And he goes, Deborah, I have been doing the sword for 6 months. She's like, what? Suit up, let's go. I mean, what a great overcoming of a rejection.
And now he's a world-class like sword. I don't know if it's a sword fighter, but like he knows. We saw him at the Lilac City Comic Con here in Spokane this summer, and he is amazing with a sword. And I know in my own interview with him, he took that upon himself to become a world-class swordsman.
And so it's like that no is not the end.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
And so many people have hit that too. Like my agent in Seattle for acting and modeling, she was like, Cindy Crawford failed 17 times before getting an agency. And it's like one of the greatest things about what she had mentioned is like even the best fail.
Yeah.
You always hear that story of Michael Jordan not making the high school basketball team.
Yeah.
And it was like, but he kept going. He never gave up and he just kept trying. And it's like, even though we're not Michael Jordan, the whole idea is that if it's a goal that you want to achieve, you just have to keep trying different ways of getting to your result. And it was like, she said, the no is not right now.
Yeah.
Right. But maybe later.
Yeah.
Maybe in a year.
I mean, I think it just goes to show that like anyone who has made it in their life has had to navigate humongous no's in their life. And I guess that kind of leads me to like asking like the future of navigating now and looking into 2025, like who do you want to have on and what can people expect from the future of this podcast? Because it's not going anywhere.
Well, I hope it's not going anywhere because I'm having such a fun time doing it and I'm learning so much. I know that one of your favorite episodes is with Russ Bannerman. He is. We have not launched his episode, but it's like one of the things that he mentioned was he loved interviewing people because of what he was learning from those people. And every day that we're interviewing and we're listening to these stories, I'm learning so much. So yes, I want to keep bringing on guests with stories that not only are super unique, but that are relatable.
Yeah.
And I think to continue with that guest list, like one of our greatest episodes, view-wise and popular-wise, was Jennifer Teskey, the principal at my daughter's elementary school, because I think it was because she was so relatable. And she shared it with her community, and her community really cares about her and believes in her and like what she's providing. And it's like, I think that was very relatable. So I think bringing guests on that have stories that are relatable, but that are unique, that really bring impact, and remind everyone, all the listeners, that it's like you're not alone. And every day is just, when you are rejected, when you do fail, and when you have that self-doubt, that imposter syndrome, it's like, how do you overcome that? And I think the trick is like, bringing these guests on with their little anecdotes. And it seems that the anecdotes are always that you just don't give up.
Yeah.
You have a confidence team around you. That's been a big theme that people believe in. It's like having people that actually support you and bring you up and like help pick you up, walk through that fire because you're not alone. And then to continue with stories like that where people are seeing that it's relatable and that as long as the audience is getting that value and I'm getting that value because I know I am, it's like, what a great self-development journey that we're all going on. And I think that if we can continue to bring valuable content, memorable content, and referable content, I think that that's the trick. And I think that's what I would like going forward in 2025.
Yeah. I think we talked about this a couple of weeks ago, but like I know one of the biggest no's that you face so far in this is the listeners. Like we and that like we need all of our listeners to get on YouTube, Spotify, wherever you're listening to this podcast, like comment, like let us know what you love about the podcast. Let us know like who you want to see on the podcast because like the best way we can navigate the no's of this show are to hear from the listeners and the more people that comment, the more people will see it. That will go up in the algorithms of, all those places. And that will just get more and more eyes and ears on Navigating No.
Well, and I think it's funny because it's like, I am a new podcast.
Yeah.
Right. And I might have the greatest story ever, but if no one knows about it, it's not going to be seen. And so I think like trying to organically grow this has been difficult. I thought it would be a little easier, but it's not, right? And it's the ability to share. So what is, if I don't ask, people are going to assume that I'm doing fine.
Right.
So it's like, how do I ask for more subscribers, more followers, more views, more comments, more sharing, but not be too pushy, right? And so we tried something funny the other day where it was like, well, let's be authentically humble. And it was like we tried this we tried to mention like, hey, our subscribers, our listeners or listeners or subscribers aren't very high based on our analytics. And that was I stole that from Major League. I don't know if anyone ever saw that movie, but he basically says the Indians have been winning lately and based on our attendance, you haven't, right? It's like I was trying to be funny about it because it is funny.
Yeah.
But then at the whole point, being serious about it, and then at the end we nail it, and I'm like, and it's because I took my squeaky shoes off. We had to redo that test. So it's like the whole time because I mean, not everything is perfect in life.
No.
Right. And so it's like take after take, and we don't edit any of our interviews. So it's kind of funny, but it was like trying to get that out. It's been hard. That has been a navigating no for sure. Trying to get that to share that. But I would love if this does take off more and we do reach more lives and bring more value to more people. Because when I speak, for example, everybody comes up to me and they're like, man, that topic is so relatable and it really hit home. It reminded me of my mom. It reminded me of when I got dumped. It reminded me when I tried out for my first job. And I didn't realize it, but it was my perspective, my mindset, and how I shifted it. And I just realized like, wow, I was able to overcome this. I really was. But it took being denied. It took being rejected. And it's like, how do we continue that? And I think that it's important to keep the momentum moving and get people on that can tell that relatable story.
Yeah.
And I mean, I have a power list of people that I would love to bring on. I'd love to be a podcast. I would love to be on Mel Robbins' podcast because she's like this goal that I would love to become. I look up to her and how she speaks authentically, and it's like I'd love to have her on as a guest. I'm an uber Arnold Schwarzenegger fan, and I know for a fact he has gone through failures. I'd love to pick his brain and hear him. And I don't know. Will Guidara is somebody that I look up to too, and he wrote the book Unreasonable Hospitality. Yeah, and it hits home. He and Simon Sinek, they're great, and it's like I'd love to have him on the podcast. His book is wonderful. Is there anybody that you would think that would be great?
Man, I go to podcasters when I think of who I'd love to see. I mean, and not all of them are like traditionally podcasters, but like Conan O'Brien, like him how many no's he's faced over his life, and like he's one of my biggest inspirations of why I even wanted to be a podcaster,
Sure.
or talk to people. I mean, I was 8 years old watching Conan O'Brien in 1994, and I would watch him late night, like almost every night. And like, he's just someone I've just grown up with, and just someone I'd just love to see someone talk with, especially in the navigating no field. I mean, who else? Like, there's so many people. Like, I think of,
you have sports stars, you have like Hollywood actors, you have motivational speakers, you have authors, you have scientists, you have all these people have so many stories. I think what you mentioned is about hitting people that you have some kind of I don't know, I'm interested in hearing the story of somebody else and how they got there. Like Ron Thomas was one of ours, right? And when he was in the original Karate Kid and now in the Cobra Kai series, and it's like, I idolized that whole thing, and it totally, karate and martial arts and judo was partly because of the Karate Kid, how it changed my life. And to be able to interview him and like find out, deep dive and find some gems about the Karate Kid was just awesome for me. So it's like finding, and Arnold Schwarzenegger would be that other person. It's like somebody that I idolized for so long, got me into weightlifting, got me into the gym, changed my life about how to eat right. And seeing somebody like, I want to become that person. And I think that's another great thing, is that some of our guests are people that I want to start my own business. I want to become a supermodel. I want to become an actor. I want to write a book. These are people that have stories that are sharing with the audience, like, this is how I did it. And it sucked getting there. It hurt getting there. But man, I just kept at it, and I eventually got it. And I think that's great. So if those are people that I would love, I think we mentioned this, it's like, if the audience has people that they'd like to hear from, mention that in the comments, because I will reach out to them. Just like in speaking, I have to navigate that. No, all I can do is ask, right? What am I going to be told? No, yes. And the worst thing that can be told is no. But you know what? Maybe we can get that yes, because it only takes that one yes to succeed at it.
I know I want to see on, and this is easy, is I would love to see your wife come on here and talk about her navigating no. And
navigating me is what she'd be.
Navigating blue.
That's right. Oh my gosh, how would that be? Deal. I'll ask her to do that. I know that that's great, because she is honestly one of my biggest support systems, because she hears every episode and she goes, Blue, this was great. I think I would apply this next time, or this really resonated with. One of her favorites is Jean-Luc's episode, where he talks about like, the work, like when he was going up the last 4 minutes before he made the Olympic team, he told his partner, Caitlin, he was like, what if we win? Let's change our mindset and think, what if we do win? What if we make this? And like that, there's changes that perspective. And it's like anything that Heidi does, like going for corporate America or doing her workouts. And it's like, what is that inspiration? What is the currency that's going to get her to be better, or inspire her, or light that fire underneath her? And I think so many of our guests have said so many things that have like, let's set fire and kindling on, and set it on fire and see what happens, because there have been some great stories. And I think I also would like to mention that it's like, you can go back, and because I wanted this episode right now to be more of like a New Year's resolution, because we've learned so many things along the way of all the episodes that we've done, but I want people to be able to go back and hear the takeaways. But I think a lot of the overall general theme, I feel, and I want to hear your opinion on it too, is that I feel like it's creating a confidence team, having your own personal mantra, like talking to yourself, how you talk to yourself. Like, do you have a trigger or something that's going to, like a theme music or a scene in a movie, or something that you say, like I say on versus the no, or Sandy says, Sandy, you were born for this, or Russ even said, like, it doesn't matter. It's like there's a lot of little things that we say to ourselves to get through that, right? And those challenges. And to have that confidence team and to actually take action. Because we can dwell on it and we can let it control us, and we can be bitter and angry and all mad and stuff and go to the dark side, right? Or you can do something about it, and not being afraid to actually take that action. I think that is that overall theme. Are you getting that too? Is there something else that you feel is really hit?
I'm getting that theme too. It's definitely, I think I mentioned earlier, is like, it's hearing these stories has really given me the mentality of like, don't give up on, what you want to do with your life. And like, because I set out on a goal in 2021 to start a podcasting studio, and there's been a ton of ups and downs, and this last year has been probably more downs than ups. But I think there's no one else in Spokane that's offering this, and I can't just like let it end because of,
I love that.
If I do, then I'll have a lot of people who can't make their podcasts. And so
me being one,
you being one. And,
right.
But as soon as I get into a positive mindset, I feel like every time that happens, like the door opens with more people who want to start podcasts. It's when I'm in a negative mindset is when I feel like maybe people feel that from me. I don't know. Like,
yeah,
things are negative, it kind of goes backwards. And if I start getting positive, like I've had so many people reach out to me this past month about starting a podcast, but that also might be people really want to start podcasts in the new year.
Well, absolutely. But that's that goal, right?
Yeah,
like, and everybody has these New Year's resolution. As a personal trainer, everybody was in January, February, and then it just died down, right? And it's like, but the people who were consistent, the people who kept going at their goal, if they wanted an 8-pack, if they wanted to lose 50 pounds, if they wanted biceps that were 16 inches versus 19 inches, if they wanted to become Arnold Schwarzenegger, it's like they just consistently did it. Every day they consistently kept going forward. And I think Matt Dubin mentioned that in his podcast about the goal setting. It's like you can have a goal, but it has to be a vivid path, and it also has to be a goal that you can reach, attainable goal. Like one of the feedbacks that I got was that you can make a goal. If I want to be an astronaut, your mom might tell you no.
Right.
But along the path, and you really want to be an astronaut, maybe you become a physicist, or you work for NASA, or you become a pilot at in the Navy or in the Air Force. And it's like, maybe that's a different route. But the point is, like, if you have that vivid goal and you can picture it, as long as you keep moving towards that goal, you're making headway. And it's those daily habits like James Clear talks about in Atomic Habits. It's like making movement forward. And if you fail, at least fall forward. Yeah. Right. And to continue doing that.
My kids asked me the other day what I wanted to be when I grow up, when I was a kid.
My friend.
And and I said I wanted to be a voiceover person, like for cartoons, because I had a really bad lisp when I was a kid. Like I had a speech impediment. I couldn't say my R's and S's, and I was like, well, I could become like a cartoon like voiceover actor, because like they all have speech impediments, and then I kind of, as I look at myself now, I still am doing something in entertainment and something that I find very exciting and different. Like, I mean, when I was 8 years old, there was no podcasting.
Sure.
So it's very much the beginnings of a new type of business. Like, I'm still at the very beginnings of this. This is like being in radio back in the 1920s. Like, that didn't really exist. There was no like way of really figuring out a business around it. And that's how I look at podcasting, is just like, we've been in podcasting for 15 years. Like, we've only had it for that long. And I get to be on the forefront of trying to create a space for podcasters. And I think, but when it coming back to like what's my New Year's resolution or 2025, like I think I need to come up with a word like that gives me that like on, like that switch that
turning
note
no
on,
from on,
like so I can remind myself of that in 2025. And I don't have that right now, but I'm going to figure that out before the new year.
Well, my mantra moving forward is memorable, valuable, and referable. Because everything in my life, if I have hit those three things, whether that's writing a book or whether it's a speech, being a personal trainer, being a self-defense tactician, that is what has always worked for me. It's interesting that you say that, because whatever you want to become, it can adapt, it can change, right? And it's like, how do you see that? I guarantee you, in the 80s, if they had diagnosed me with ADHD, I would have been diagnosed with ADHD or something like that. But I had to learn to take that energy and actually leverage it and use it to my advantage. And I just became a motivational speaker. I became a personal trainer. I became all karate champion. It was like I used that energy to my advantage.
Yeah.
And now I'm still doing the same thing, but I never thought that I was going to be a teacher, even though every assessment test I took said you were going to be a teacher. I'm just doing it in a totally different way.
Right.
In my mind, I thought I was, there's no way I want to be a teacher, but that is what I do.
Yeah.
And it's because I love it and I'm passionate about it and I have so much fun doing it. I like beating people up in personal training too, but I have that t-shirt now and it's like I can reach so many more people doing this. And so I think moving forward, my goal will be that memorable, valuable, and referable with every one of our episodes.
Yeah.
And every speech that I give in the book, then in writing, navigating, no.
I was going to ask about that. So, I mean, with this, and you've mentioned this multiple times on the podcast, that Navigating No will become a book.
Yeah.
How is that going?
So they say it should be about 75,000 words, and I'm about 55,000. So
Okay.
I'm close, and I think in the next 6 to 9 months, I think the book will be available. So
Okay.
we'll see. But that's the greatest thing is that in the podcasting, like in the Sum of Four, I was able to speak and then manipulate the book and change it organically because as I spoke, if something didn't hit, I was getting immediate feedback and changing it right in the book. So I was changing the book as I was writing it, and then it became a better book because of that experience, those repetitions I was getting in. And I think that the podcast is allowing me to do the same thing because it's like I'm not only listening to the feedback and comments that people are telling me, but I'm also getting that new content from people that I'm interviewing. I'm like, man, there is an overall theme here, and we have all experienced this, and it's like, man, if we can just take that and people, our listeners, our audience can start to apply it, I think it's going to change lives because it's changed my life. The way that I did it might not work for somebody, but it might work if somebody else's story might work. And I think that's what has been so impactful.
Yeah. No, it's been very impactful for me, and I'm very excited to see where this podcast goes in 2025 because I know you have big plans to take it new places and expand the team and just have more content from Navigating No in the new year. So
well, I want to bring that value. I do want to grow, and it's just making it more marketable in the sense of like the book release that will come out, and then my speeches and things. But it's like also I want to say that not the journey, but the people I'm meeting and the connections that I'm making are priceless.
Yeah.
Like we have met some really cool people.
We have.
Right? And their stories are like, wow. And it's heartwarming to me that they open up.
Yeah.
And I think that's incredible. And so if we can continue doing that, I look forward to doing that with you.
Yeah.
You and I we're going to take a week off.
Yep.
So this is going to drop, I believe, on the 23rd.
Yep.
And then our next episode will drop on the 6th of January. So we will take that little break, but I am very much looking forward to continuing this relationship and working on it and bringing more value and content to our listeners. So thank you for helping me because I could not do this alone, Brennan. I am a one-man show, and you were helping me out because I'm not a one-man show without you.
Well, I couldn't do this without you because if I didn't have this, I couldn't. I mean, honestly, this podcast has, I've mentioned already, it's taught me so much. And when you were saying earlier about, you mentioned something about being deniable or like there's like getting denied. And the one thing I will say about this podcast is that it is undeniable. And that's a word I love to use to explain.
Is that going to be your new word?
That might
undeniable.
be my undeniable.
See, look how inspirational this podcast is.
Like when I talk to people about music, like if your music has to be undeniable for me to connect with it, and this podcast really is undeniable, and there's nothing but authenticity within it. This is not fake. Like the one thing I've learned about you over this last year is like you are always on, and I kind of thought at first like that's just like you're putting on a front, but like that's who you are all the time. you run at like 100 miles per hour every time I see you.
Heidi will say she knows how to navigate with me. She's like, oh, he's gonna embarrass me. He's gonna do something. He's gonna bring his A game every day. That's so funny. I love that, and so undeniable is gonna be your new word.
I love it. Yep.
I also want to do a shout out to our guests.
Yes,
because they have not only impacted me with their stories, but with our audience as well. But it's like, they just deserve a shout out because we are learning from them and they're sharing their stories and they're being so vulnerable and authentic. And it's like, man, that's really special that people are opening up about that. And I look forward to bringing more guests on and sharing that with more people. But if the audience has people that they like to hear, I cannot mention enough. Like, let me know and I will navigate that no and ask, because if I don't ask, I won't know.
That's true.
So thank you for being a part of my life, Brennan, and coming on and being a part of this podcast and really pushing me, because you are that confidence team. So let's make 2025 even better than 2024. Let's get that traction moving and keep bringing that value to the listeners and the viewers. So
yeah.
thank you
for being on. I'm going to put this on the listeners. Please share, like, comment wherever you're listening to the podcast at, watching the podcast at. It will very much help
people don't know
the future of the podcast if you can do those things. And it's invaluable to Blue and to myself to get more eyes and ears on navigating no.
And I'll continue making a ham of myself for sure, as often as I can. But in all seriousness, thank you for being a part of this, and thank you for pushing me past my comfort zone, because it's been a fun adventure, and I cannot wait for 2025.
Awesome.
Thank you. Thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of Navigating No. I hope you found today's conversation just as inspiring and insightful as I did. We'd love your help to make it even better. So, if you enjoyed this episode, we would love to hear your feedback. And if you think someone else could benefit from hearing it, please share it and help us spread optimism and positivity. We release a new interview every Monday, so don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss an episode. Thanks for listening.